Hey guys, just a quick little video here. So I'm here at a Safeway store. I'm not necessarily going to say which one it is. But see, they have this door here and they have a door down there. And at a certain time of night, they will close these doors. But it's an automatic door, see. So in an emergency, I could push those open. But as you see here, they have barricaded this with shopping carts. They've barricaded it. Nobody can get out this door if there's an emergency in there. Okay? So, I mentioned it to the clerk, and then they had the manager come over and talk to me or whatever. And I said, look, it's fine if you want to close the door at a certain time. That's fine. Because in an emergency, this door can be pushed open. But they're not allowed to lock it during business hours. And they certainly are not allowed to barricade it with carts. So I told them, I'm not looking to get anyone in any trouble here, but what I'm doing is trying to prevent some incident. If the wrong person comes in, like an overly litigious person who wants to sue them for this, or if the fire marshal comes in, it's a huge fine. You cannot barricade a potential emergency exit. You can't do it. So I told him that, and you know what he told me? He says, well, it's our corporate policy to do that so that people can't push it open. And I was like, yeah, well, but your store policy does not supersede the law or building codes. So I'm just saying, you guys are going to get sued. And he's like, oh, I hope not. Well, hoping, you can hope when you're freezing to death in a forest that somebody's going to build a campfire and warm you up. But hoping won't get that fire built. It just means you'll freeze to death. So this guy hoping that they don't get sued, well, hoping is hoping. But the facts of the matter is, right now that I'm recording this, right now, and I can show everybody that they have in fact done it, I could sue them right now if I wanted to. I'm not a very litigious person. But anyway, I'm going to pause this for a minute and we'll pick it up here in a little bit. Okay, I'm back home now. I probably spoke a little too soon. I don't think I could sue them personally just because I saw that. Wow, that's a really bright light. Here, we're going to do it this way. Because in order to sue people, you have to get what's called standing. And in order to gain standing, you would have to prove, you'd have to assert an antagonistic assertion of civil rights, and that someone violated those rights, and that there was damages and whatnot. Hold on, I'm going to fix this light because it's a little annoying. Turn on this one and turn off that one. So I would have to show, oh damn, I'm making a mess. I would have to, if there was an emergency, and you never know when that could happen. Like in Boulder, we had a dude show up and shoot up a King Soopers. For those of you that don't know what King Soopers is, it's a Kroger store. This is telling me my battery is going to run out. Anyway, but yeah, if there was an emergency and I couldn't get out, then I could sue them. I could say, I have a civil right to not burn to death in your store. You barricaded the fire exit. I was almost burned to death in your store. So that shows civil injury. It shows damages. And then the third one is that there has to be a way for the court to make you whole again. Like, give me some money or whatever. Hold on. I gotta plug this in over here. That should do it. Anyway, point being is that I see this a lot. And like for instance, if you guys ever watch like the 1A community stuff, you'll have the cops come out when they're filming in the lobby and the cops will say, "It's our policy that you can't record here." Or, when you're in a public place in some place and they're like, "We have a policy that says you're not allowed to record here." Well, a policy, as far as it pertains to a business, a policy only pertains to the employees. They're not allowed to just make policies and then enforce those on to people. Like, if Walmart had a policy that you're not allowed to wear a blue shirt on Tuesday, and I go into a Walmart on a Tuesday and I don't work there, I'm just there to shop and I'm wearing a blue shirt, they can't just make me leave or anything. Their policy only pertains to their employees. So if one of their employees shows up in a blue shirt, well, guess what? They can do stuff to him or her because they are, in fact, your boss, right? But we always hear all this crap. The policy is this, the policy is that. Well, I told the guy there, let me look this up. CRS. Blocking exits. So I'm looking up Colorado revised statutes. Obstructing the entrance into or exit from. Oh, this has to do with funerals. That's weird. That's not what I'm looking at. Okay, let me look it up. Okay, so I was looking under Colorado revised statutes, and I should have been looking under codes. So I came across this. It says blocking a fire exit violation, fines and penalties. And then it says blocking a fire exit is a severe violation of essential fire codes. And now there's a paywall in front of me. Hold on. Okay, it says blocking a fire exit is a severe violation of essential fire codes. Authority figures like NFPA, OSHA mandate clearance and accessibility of exit doors and pathways, providing ease of accessibility and a safe evacuation procedure during an emergency. It is the top priority for any building or establishment. If the code is violated, you might be liable to pay a hefty fine that can cost you $50,000 or $100,000. So notice it says exit doors and pathways. So if you got a bunch of stuff stacked up in front of one of the exits of your building, you're going to be in trouble. Especially, if the fire marshal comes in or whatever. But especially if there is an emergency. I mentioned earlier, or I don't know if I did, because I was recording and the phone was off. But anyway, in Boulder, Colorado, we had this incident where some lefty twit went in there and shot the place up. And if all the doors and stuff had been barricaded and people weren't able to escape, imagine what would have ensued, And then after that, the store would have been just liable for everybody that died in there because they blocked all the exits. People couldn't get out, whatever. In fact, I'm pretty sure there was a nightclub that was in an old abandoned warehouse. I can't remember where it was. But it burned down and a bunch of people died because all the exits had been chained shut. So putting shopping carts in front of the door, that's a pretty big violation. But the guy was telling me it's our corporate policy. It's our policy. It's our policy. Policies don't mean anything when it comes to the law and when it comes to, any kind of lawsuit that's going to happen because of it. The policy, what it does, if that is indeed the policy, what it proves is that it's negligent at the highest levels. At the highest levels. So if this guy is trying to tell me that Safeway corporate told them to do that, well, then he's getting the entire company in trouble. Like if I was able to prove that corporate Safeway told them to do that, well, then that doesn't implicate just that one store. Now it implicates the entire corporation. Um, so I have an idea that it was not a corporate decision, that it was just somebody at that store that decided to do that because somebody was shoplifting and pushing their way out that door. Now, that could be true, could be true. But what you do is you got to post somebody over by that door so that that doesn't happen. But you're not allowed to just block the door, period, at all. Like, if I was the type of dickhead that liked to get people in trouble, I could just call the fire marshal right now and send them down there. You know, I'm not a litigious person because the reason that I warned them, not because I want to sue them, but it's because I'm offering help. I'm trying to prevent something before it happens, you know. I'm not the kind of guy who just leaves Legos at the top of the stairs just because I want to see if somebody might fall down the stairs after they step on them. That's not, who does that? Jerks do that. So I'm the guy who's going to clean up the Legos at the top of the stairs, even if they're not mine. I'm like, no, no, no. Someone's going to step on this and they're going to fall down the stairs. So my intentions were just to let them know that they're going to get sued or they're going to get fined by the fire department or whoever it is. But, these stores, they think they can just make whatever policies they want and then they don't care about what the law is. Like up in Denver, here, I'm going to look this up real quick. Here you go. Look up public restroom accessibility. Okay. So up in Denver and in the surrounding area, the police go to all the gas stations and they tell the employees to close the bathrooms after like 9 or whatever. And they say, well, because we don't want homeless people going in there and doing drugs or whatever. And that's literally their mindset. Now, different states have different laws about public restrooms. A lot of states have laws that say if you have a business that's open to the public, you must have public restrooms. You must. And they must be accessible for the disabled. There's federal rulings on that, ADA stuff, But in some states, they are allowed to restrict the restrooms to customers only, which that's understandable. I mean, I guess I can kind of get that. But the fact remains is that you must have a bathroom that is open to the public. And if you don't, there's this law right here, and I just looked it up. ADA requirements for accessible bathrooms. It regulates seat heights between 17 and 19 inches. But in some states, they are allowed to restrict the bathroom use. But there is a federal ruling about people who have IBS. A special law. Let me look it up. Allie's Law. Allie's Law. This is the one. Okay, now I'm going to read this. Now, this doesn't just apply to IBS. It applies to anyone who has any kind of medical issue that they might need a bathroom like right now. It says Allie's Law requires that retail businesses with employee toilet facilities allow customers with specific medical conditions to access if the need arises. So it says people with certain medical conditions, including inflammatory bowel disease, sometimes need to use the restroom urgently. This can be difficult if they are out of the house or workplace, as not all businesses have public restrooms. But there is always a restroom where the employee gets to go. I mean, there has to be one. So many states in the United States have passed the Restroom Access Act, known as Allie's Law, to acknowledge this medical need. Read on to learn more about Allie's Law, blah, blah, blah. So if you go to Medical News Today, you can read this article. But Allie's Law is a federal ruling. And so in Denver, like if I went in there with like an elderly person in a wheelchair into the gas station and I said, hey, we just bought some gas out there. Where's your restroom? And they said, oh, sorry, we don't have a public restroom. which they do that here in my town. There's a 7-Eleven right up the way. He just says, we don't have a public restroom, which I know is bullshit because that store's been there forever and I've used the public restroom. But he just didn't want, and I said, well, can I just use it anyway? And he goes, it's locked. And I said, well, can I have the key? And he goes, I don't have a key. So I said, oh yeah, well then where do you go when you need to use the bathroom? Do you just go piss in the parking lot? And he goes, I'm so sorry, sir. And I said, okay, well, I'm coming back in here with my grandma, and if you don't let her use the fucking thing, we're going to sue the shit out of you. And he's like, well, it's our policy. So again, with that policy thing, policies don't mean anything. The policy applies to the employees, or it doesn't apply to people who come in off the street. And so up in Denver, I was doing this job where I was driving medical stuff from my area and had to take it to a lab in Denver. So by the time I got there, I had to take a piss. And so I'd go fill up the gas tank and go inside. And then they would have all this stuff blocking off the bathroom. So I just pushed that shit out of the way and go use the bathroom anyway. And eventually they started like stacking it from floor to ceiling. And so finally I went and asked them. I said, why are you blocking off this, they're like, oh, it's under maintenance. And I said, it's not under maintenance. I pushed those things out of the way and gone and used it. They work fine. There's something else going on here. And so finally this girl, she says, well, the police come in here and they tell us to do that so that homeless people don't go in there and use the bathroom and do drugs in the bathroom. And I said, well, I'm not a homeless person. I'm a customer and I really need to use the bathroom. She goes, sorry. I said, okay, so what you're telling me is you're openly admitting that you are discriminating against the homeless. Openly admitting that to me, that the reason you do that is because you're discriminating against homeless. Now, there's this issue, everybody kept bringing it up. Oh, the homeless just poop all over the sidewalks and stuff. Well, guess what? If they aren't allowed to use any public restroom anywhere, they still gotta go. And humans are animals, just like your dog, or just like, only they're not gonna clean up after their turd when they leave it in your parking lot. Would you rather them leave a turd in your toilet and flush it, or leave it in the parking lot and now you, the employee, has to go out there and clean up after that? It's pretty stupid. That whole argument is stupid, because even homeless people need to poop. Anyway, but she openly admitted that to me, and she says, well, the police tell us to do that. And I said, if the police told you to go shoot up a school, would you do that? Because just because the police tell you to do something doesn't mean it's legal, and it doesn't mean it's morally okay. In fact, usually it's the opposite. Whatever the police are telling you is probably not legal or moral in any sense of the whatever. But that's, cops, they go to a police academy. They don't study law. They just say, do what I say, blah, blah, blah. And then people go, yes, sir, can I lick your boots more? Well, one of these days, someone's going to go into one of those bathrooms who has IBS or something like that, and the employee's going to give them a bunch of runaround like that, and then they're going to shit themselves. And so remember what we were talking about standing earlier? Well, guess what? I have a civil right not to shit myself. You're preventing me from carrying out that right. And because you did that, I have now shit myself, and that has caused me emotional distress and whatever else, blah, blah, blah. And now I could sue them under Allie's law because they won't let me use the bathroom at all. So anyway, this was just a kind of a video, and we're discussing policy versus law. And just because it's a policy doesn't make it right. And so this Safeway where I was just at where I just was. Sorry, poor grammar. They're going to get in huge trouble if they keep putting those carts in front of that door. I guess that's all I'm getting at. So any of you folks that, see stuff like that, it's just because the employees are not very smart, or they don't study the law, or they don't know what the law is, and they just think it's a good idea. Hey, well, what if we just did this, and then homeless people won't poop in our toilet or whatever? It's not a good defense when it comes down to civil litigation. Thinking it was a good idea at the time is not a helpful defense. So, This guy down at the Safeway who told me that it's their corporate policy to barricade that exit, he's getting his whole corporate thing into trouble. Because now he's throwing them under the bus for something that they did at the store, right? I guarantee you the corporate did not tell them to do that. Okay. Anyway, I've ran my mouth long enough. 14, 15-minute rant, whatever. Just so next time you hear some kind of crap come out of somebody's mouth about, oh, it's our policy, you know, just gaslight them and say something like, well, it's my policy to break old ladies' noses when I see them. Does that mean it's okay? I train all of my employees to just break old ladies' noses. And so then when some old lady comes to complain to management and says, your clerk just broke my nose, I'll say, well, I've investigated the incident and everything he did was within policy. See, so, if someone is gaslighting you, you can't put up with it. I told this guy straight to his face. I said, well, your policies do not supersede building codes or laws. So, and he goes, well, that's just what, they told us to do. I said, well, you are going to get sued. So, I don't know. I did as much as I could do. So, and it's not like I'm giving two craps about if somebody sues Safeway. I mean, Safeway's a multi-billion-dollar company. They can afford it. So what? I'm just trying to prevent tragedy in the event of some emergency occurs and people can't get out of the store. I don't care about Safeway, but I care about all the people that are in Safeway, right? All right. So anyway, have a good one.